Welcome back to episode 4 of the Midtown Madness podcast. We're going to get into some men's basketball talk. We're going to talk about specifically the loss at VCU, the win versus Richmond. We're going to take a look around the A10. We're going to actually have a guest on, Curry Hicks Sage, a UMass podcaster, writer, tweeter, all that jazz. He's going to join us. And then we're going to get into the women's basketball team, men's soccer, women's soccer. There's some volleyball, baseball, softball, all that good stuff. We're going to get into it all on this episode of the Midtown Madness podcast. And we're back for this episode 4. We're keeping it going. Pete, good to talk to you again. Ready to get into some Billiken athletics. We're gonna do. There's so many teams playing. This is going to end up being a long episode, and I know people have talked about long episodes, but we're going to kind of skip over as much as possible that isn't basketball related. I know most of our listeners come to us for basketball, so got to pay homage to those guys, right?
That's right.
Well, let's kick it off. A really salty start to this podcast. Billikens go to Richmond, Virginia. The Siegel Center play the cult of the VCU. They lose 67-65. Really tough way to lose this one, huh, Pete?
Yeah, this one didn't leave a good taste in our mouths. I mean, in addition to being a close game that we were in and could have had pretty much the whole time, there was a lot of foul trouble. And it's also a frustrating game because VCU's without Bones Highland, their top player, in addition to another rotation player. So it leaves a tough taste in your mouth because it's a game against a top team in the league on the road. It was a huge opportunity and couldn't quite get it done. Yeah.
We'll get into I guess we'll just kick it off with the officiating. What you had a really salty, a tweet that was really going at Ted Valentine, and I liked it. I was all for it. I was there for it.
So I have a real problem with refs that just interject themselves to the point of just making the game about them. No one on earth comes to a game to see the officials. Like, even if an official's wife gets free tickets, she'd rather see the game. I mean, it's no one's there to see them. Ted Valentine is one of these refs who thinks otherwise. And look, a guy can be animated in his calls. That's fine. But the call he had with under 5 seconds to play on Collins to send their guard, I'm forgetting his name for the moment, to the free throw line. It was one of the latest whistles I've ever seen, to the degree that Slew had the ball and was heading back the opposite direction. Goodwin had dribbled, and all of a sudden there's this whistle. So in this really short amount of time, I go from hearing the whistle and being like, what's that? And then assuming, oh, they fouled us. Oh, this is great. There was a VCU fouled us as we were in transition. Great. We'll get a shot to win it at the free throw line or something. And once I realized the foul was on Collins from the play before, it was just like, are you kidding me? They showed the replay, and there's certainly an argument to be made that Collins fouled him. There's an argument to be made that it's not the kind of call you make with 4 seconds left in a game to decide the game by putting a guy on the free throw line. There's no argument to be made that he made that in enough time for it to be legitimate whatsoever. And that's a frustrating – there were a lot of reasons Slew could have won that game and put themselves in a position to lose that game. Fair enough, but the fact that was the deciding whistle makes it pretty salty indeed. So I think you felt the same way.
Yeah, I did. I read a chapter of a book once, and it was about errors in officiating, and it read that referees, when polled, said they would rather make an error of omission rather than an error of commission. And Ted Valentine is not one of those officials that responded in that way. I don't know. To be honest, I missed this part. I kind of watched it from far away because I had an indoor soccer game But it just, I don't, with 5 seconds, there's nothing you can do. Like, there's no way we're going to win that game. I knew as soon as that guy went to the line, that was it. It's
right.
I don't even know if the Elam ending fixes it. Shout out Sully. Like, because he's been saying real basketball should go to the Elam ending. I don't know if the Elam ending would fix that. I don't think so. But it's just crazy. I mean, let's get into the things that let's not harp on the officials, because that's not, people don't want to hear that. We'll talk foul trouble, 3-point shooting woes, free throw shooting woes, and the turnovers. Pete, what do you think of the foul trouble in this one? Linson, French both foul out, and Goodwin had 4 to end the game.
Yeah, it was a tough night for our bigs. Linson, I think most of his were pretty legit calls. I mean, he's got to be a little more disciplined on the defensive end. I think it's one of those things you really can sit down with him and kind of show him some tape and say, you got to be straight up here. You can't reach in there. Like, you can't bump a guy when he's doing that. Like, it seems like his things are just a matter of kind of reining it in a little bit defensively. He's not in bad position to make a play or anything like that. French had, I think all 5 of his fouls were just not necessarily soft, but just light fouls that were just frustrating. The one where he followed through and just barely nicked the 3-point shooter. He had the one that a lot of people argued about online, where he kind of he had the defender inside the semicircle, dropped his shoulder a little bit, and VCU, to their credit, or to our frustration, they made the refs bite on every single flop, or whether the flop was actually a flop or they just were knocked down. They sold the refs every single time on that, and French and Linson and Goodwin were on the other end of those, unfortunately.
We actually had a conversation about that, the semicircle, and you kind of cleared that up for me, because I was like beside myself that this could not even be looked at.
Yeah, I think a lot of people see the semicircle and just think like, well, the defender was inside there, so there's no issue. Well, in this case, I mean, there probably wouldn't have been contact had French just gone up with it. As soon as he lowers his shoulder and initiates contact, that gives the ref a reason to blow his whistle. So I don't hate that one, even if I think the contact itself was pretty soft and it probably was a flop. French did, in fact, lower his shoulder. So it's frustrating, but the semicircle doesn't give you a license to, just hit a guy on your way up to the basket.
Let's talk about the shooting in this game. Billikens go 6 of 11 from 3, not bad. Free throw shooting, though, 10 of 19. Again, you lose a game by 5. I'm sorry. Jesus. Whoa.
6 of 20 from 3, 11 of 8.
Good Lord. Sorry. I was on the Richmond box score. This is what happens when I have 5 million tabs. But you lose by 2. You shoot 11 of 18 from the free throw line, 6 of 20 from 3. I mean, 1 or 2 of either one of those, and we're not even talking about Ted Valentine.
Yeah, in the past couple of games, the bad free throw shooting has come back to kind of haunt us a little bit. Well, I should say just in recent games. And yeah, certainly the 3-point shooting being at 30% is not what you want to see. In addition to Gibson Jemmerson, he was 2 of 6, not terrible, but you really want to see him at 40% or better, because we know that's what he's capable of. So he's been a little bit cold lately. And then, Collins, Jacobs, Thatch, Hargrove all shot and missed threes in this one. Perkins was 3 of 7, so that's pretty good. And Goodwin made 1 of his 2. So overall, I think I kind of feel like as Jemmerson goes, so goes our perimeter shooting. And then free throw shooting, we're much better than we were last season, but you wouldn't know by recent games. We're just kind of barely over that 50% mark, and that's just got to be better than that.
The more humorous aspect of the free throw shooting issue in this game was that Hassan went 75% from the line, 3 of 4.
No complaints there.
No, can't complain at all. The scoring, though, really bunched up in the starters. Nothing really from our bench, only 5 bench points. Yeah. I mean, you get no contribution from, you get very little contribution from a guy like Demarius Jacobs. Martin Linson only gets a point. So our depth really wasn't able to kind of take this one over as you'd kind of expect with a team that can play 12 guys.
Yeah, it was frustrating because early in this game, and this is tied into the shooting as well, we were moving the ball really well, getting everybody involved. And I kind of feel like had that kept up, maybe Jemmerson has a better day. Maybe Jacobs kind of finds his spot a little bit. And then, maybe somebody like Hargrove or Thatch gets involved too. But we just sort of abandoned the perimeter after a while. I think we went 11 or 12 minutes of this game to end the first half, and then really the first 10 or so minutes of the second half where we didn't attempt a three-pointer. It was just really slow, plodding offensive basketball, and I don't know what happened there. I kind of think if everything's clicking offensively, maybe the bench does get more involved. But yeah, to see 5 bench points from a team that has so much depth is pretty frustrating. And the other thing that kind of stood out for me in this one, 10 turnovers in the first half. I think VCU obviously is one of those teams that's looking to do everything they can to frustrate the opponent. And they kind of do that old Rick Pitino thing of see what you can get away with early, and let's play to the limits of what the refs are able to give us. VCU does that well. Just really frustrated us in this game.
Yeah, not to get too far ahead, but that has to be a concern going into a game against a team who likes to press, like UMass.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot to learn from this game tape, and we've got to protect the ball better than that. We cleaned it up a little bit in the second half, but part of that's just because we played so slow and conservatively that you're not going to make a whole lot of turnovers if you're just not moving offensively.
Yeah, I think it's just best that we just kind of move on from VCU, and we're going to get into a more fun aspect of the week. Billikens come home to the friendly confines of the Jewel of Midtown, and they get a 72-67 win over Richmond. 1,500 fans. That's my estimation. A lot of energy in the building, a lot of good vibes. Great seeing a lot of familiar faces, or I guess I should say eyes, because you really can't tell who anybody is. Jimmy Bell starts. Gibson sits. Thoughts on this lineup change, considering Ford has been a guy who has stood firm with his lineup so far this season?
Yeah, I don't know what this means for Jemmerson, because he plays only 9 minutes and doesn't really do anything in those 9 minutes. Didn't really assert himself, didn't really show any confidence. So I don't know what's going on there. I know he's been slumping in games where he has played a little bit more. But this is clearly a game where I think Ford saw the opportunity to really dominate them on the boards. And it shows. We win the rebounding battle by 20. And so I think he kind of likes to bully Richmond. Really paid off in the first half. I think we were up by as much as 12 and end the half up by 9. We slowly let them in over the course of the second half. You were in the house. What did it kind of feel like as that was taking place?
Man, that's tough, because it never really felt like Richmond was closing the gap, and then all of a sudden you look up and it was like 2 points. But the crowd stayed with it. I mean, you could feel the crowd really get into it when the game was, it was getting close, and they felt like the Billikens needed a little boost. So, I mean, full marks to the crowd. A lot of chants going throughout. The students were engaged and in sync and making noise. It was awesome. Really. I thought it was, oh man, it was a little nervy, but you could just feel that the Billikens had the confidence, I guess.
Right. Yeah. They kept enough of it actually, to keep themselves going down the stretch. Because really, this one, it was all about the fast start we got off to. French scores the first 8 points. What did you see out of him in this game?
I just saw a guy who knows he has Golden's number. He sees a wounded animal in Grant Golden. No pun intended. Pun intended. I meant that. Given his middle finger issue, yeah, I just felt like he smelled blood in the water and took over. It was one of those things. It's like there were times where Golden went to his right hand, and you're like, he can't go left. Stop. Like, just stop him on the right, and he has nothing. So it was weird watching Golden actually play with that thing on his hand. I don't know how he didn't get called for a carry every time he used it.
Yeah, it was. I don't know seeing the game on TV, we probably had a better look at it. It almost looked like a baseball hitting glove that was thicker and only had a covering over his middle finger.
That is.
Back when I was playing CYC ball, you would have just the metal piece that went over your finger with like a pad in the middle of it. So it was, and you couldn't do anything with that on your hand. So it was clear in the first half, Golden didn't score at all. It was clear that it was getting to him. He was not going to attempt a 3-pointer. His shooting touch is outside. It was clearly going to be affected by that. In the second half, though, he kind of wakes up. He gets 10 points. Burton was another guy who didn't score in the first half and never really found his perimeter shot the whole day, but he ends with 7. And then Blake Francis for them kind of went off from 3. He ended the day 6 of 9 from 3, and we're lucky he missed his last one. So he ends up with 24. This was definitely a team that pushed us in the second half and kind of scared me. You mentioned Martin Linson really playing well lately. What did you see from him in this one?
Oh, man. I just thought his defense down the stretch was fantastic. I thought he had the stop of the game. When he's involved and playing hard and flapping his mouth, he's such a joy to watch. He's a bit of a shit disturber, and I like that in him because I think we're kindred spirits in that way. But yeah, I liked him. I'm a big fan of his right now. I think he's exactly what this. I mean, if maybe he was 4 inches taller, I'd like him a lot better. But yeah, I think he's great on this team.
He this was another game where he probably needed to be a little more disciplined defensively. Winds up with 3 fouls, in only 16 minutes. Not quite as bad as against VCU. But again, it's that efficient offense that he brings, and grabbed a couple good rebounds. He had a key block in this one and a steal, and really plays with high energy. I love what he brings for this team. But I think kind of the hero of this game, if you're going to give it to any one play, is Fred Thatch.
Yes. Well, tell me about that, because he came in and he played lockdown D for most of the game. There were times where Travis Ford has said that Fred Thatch could be the leading scorer or the best shooter on the team, and we haven't seen it. So it's you kind of hold your breath anytime Fred Thatch decides he's going to spot up for a jumper, and he makes it. He hits the 3.
He's one of these guys. He's got a wide range of tools, and you see flashes of it a lot. And last season he doesn't play much because of his illness. So he's had a kind of an up and down early career at SLU. But when you do see those pieces come together, he can give you a really great game. There's been a lot of times this season where he plays 20 minutes or fewer, and you don't really notice him a ton, but he's doing all those little things. And I think he's just kind of that non-stat sheet all-star kind of guy. So to see him come out and just confidently take that shot from the corner to put us up 4 was just a beautiful thing to see. So I'm really happy that Fred gave us that, and I think maybe we're getting a glimpse of kind of what he can do in extended minutes next year and for the rest of his career.
Yeah, I want to talk about a little bit of a lesser joyous parts of the game. First, Gibson Jemmerson. Obviously, he sits. He's had a tough go of it the last few games. It's the first time in his career he's been held scoreless as a Billiken, and it's fewest minutes played as a Billiken. He had no shots. Where does he go from here?
It's a good question. You know, his game log, if we're kind of looking at him leading up to this game, he's been trending the wrong way. You know, he's a high volume shooter, you know, and the thing that he showed us early on that was so great to see was everybody's ready for him to shoot the three. You know, even the teams that we don't know all that well early in the season, they know what he's out there to do. But he has such a great recognition of when he's being closed out hard, and he can take that really big first one dribble, big step, give himself separation, and he's got that stop and pop mid-range jumper that he seems to kind of have abandoned lately. And I don't know why. Because as you're getting cold, you know, kind of use your other tools. He's not really trying to get to the basket at all. But also, I don't think we've been doing a great job of getting him involved necessarily. So I don't know what it means when a guy's confidence seems to be sagging to then not start him and only play him 9 minutes and not really make him a feature of the offense. I felt like when he was out there, he was just a decoy, somebody to kind of throw them off and force them to guard him all the way out past the perimeter.
And it worked at least one time. There was the Jimmy Bell dunk closer to the end of the game. I wonder if maybe he needs something like an assist to get himself going. You know, like I'm not a great athlete, but like if I'm playing, you know, some sort of recreational sport and I'm playing terrible, like even if I stop worrying about scoring maybe and I start worrying about how I can set somebody else up or do something easier to, you know, boost my confidence, maybe a nice, you know, extra pass that leads to a wide open three for somebody else. Maybe that's something he kind of needs. Got to
get him involved somehow. I'm hoping UMass might be a slightly better matchup for him. But I don't know. I mean, he's only last 4 games, he's 3 of 17 from 3, and he's 5 of 20 overall. You know, he was well over 40% from 3 heading into that stretch, and now he's under. So I think it's frustrating times for him. Also, you know, for the first time in his career, averaging less than 10 points a game. So I don't know the whole story of what's going on there, but he's got to get his confidence back because that's a tool we really need in the A10 tournament and beyond if we're going to play any postseason basketball. But there's one other guy who's not really playing much lately. What do you think's going on with Jacobs?
You know, I had that written down, and I was going to ask you. I just wonder if he's just still banged up. I mean, I can't see a reason why you wouldn't have him in this game as when you needed physical defense. Maybe it's Fred Thatch stepping up and getting more minutes because as I think most people could tell, when Thatch wasn't getting a lot of minutes, Demarius was getting a lot of minutes, and now that Thatch is getting a lot of minutes, Demarius is it the chicken or the egg? I don't know.
He's another one whose trend line has kind of gone the wrong direction over the course of the season. When we were playing the non-conference schedule, it was very clear he was asserting himself as the 6th man on this team. And, you know, he's playing 20 minutes a game, give or take, you know, maybe in the high teens heading into the A10 season. And just giving us really good minutes, playing great defense, as efficient as he possibly could have been from the field. And I don't know, you know, I think was it the Rhode Island game where he got hurt? There was one game where he did hurt himself, or he had gotten hurt.
I think it was Bonaventure.
Bonaventure. Okay, so that makes sense because then he didn't play much against Rhode Island, and hasn't quite been himself since then. Because even as the conference season starts and he's not scoring quite as much, you know, Fred had bigger minutes in a couple games, like that first Dayton game. Jacobs was still, you know, doing everything you expected of him, but all of a sudden, you know, since the injury, really his production has fallen off considerably, and he's doing that thing that was so frustrating last season, where he'd give you the game against Tulane, where he goes off and he's like 6 for 6 from 3, and then for 3 games you just don't even notice. And that's kind of what I've felt like the last 5 or 6 games with him is he just doesn't seem to be there.
Yeah, I agree. I think to close the book on this one, This was a character win against Richmond. With recent results for this team, it would have been easy to fold, I think. But the Billikens, they hang tough, and they come away with an important win to keep whatever limited grasp they have on a potential at-large bid alive. 72-67. Perkins and French lead the way with 15 points each. I think with that, I think we're going to go around the A10. On the 23rd, VCU obviously took out the win over the Billikens in Richmond. UMass loses to Richmond at Richmond 79-65. St. Bonaventure pulls a game out 56-53 at Davidson. George Mason beats George Washington 63-58. This is on 2/24. St. Joe's wins over UD. I mean, this is just bonkers. Nearly hang a C note on the Flyers, 97-84. Let's stop and did you watch this game?
No, I did not see this. This is one where I only caught the score late as it was happening. And I could not believe what I was seeing, but immediately my mind went to all the Dayton fans who were dancing on our grave when we lost to them last week. So maybe don't do that all the time, fans, when you see your rival losing or when you beat your rival, I don't know what to say about this game. 97 points against St. Joe's. I don't get it.
It reminds me of the Phil Martelli dad game.
Yeah, that's right.
When who went off for them in that one? Charlie Brown. Yeah, he banked in a three and from like 40 feet, and you knew it was over. I'm not gonna say I didn't enjoy watching Dayton get their ass handed to them.
It doesn't help us, but there's definitely a little satisfaction, and it's kind of an odd thing because of all the cancellations and everything in the schedule. St. Joe's has actually not lost since their game against Duquesne. That was like 5 weeks ago. I think it was January 30th. So about 4 weeks ago.
LaSalle goes into Duquesne or wins at home against Duquesne 85-65. On the 26th, the Billikens took down Richmond 72-67. St. Bonaventure trounces GW 88-41. Just an absolute shit kicking from the Bonnies. On the 27th, I forgot to put these down. I'm a terrible podcast host. VCU loses to Davidson, putting our hopes at the double bye on life support. George Mason dominated LaSalle. Duquesne outlasted URI. This was close for most of the game, but Duquesne pulled away late. St. Joe's at Fordham was canceled. The standings as we sit right now in the A10. Well, first of all, congrats to our guys SB Unfurled and friends as the Bonnies have officially claimed the A10 crown. If I asked you at the beginning of the season if Bonaventure would take it home, what would you say?
I wouldn't have believed that anyone but SLU or Richmond or maybe VCU would have been on that line. I figured maybe Dayton and Bonaventure would pester the top tier teams and maybe grab that 4 seed, but no, I never saw Bonaventure running away with this one.
But congrats to Mark Schmidt and his program because that's a big time accomplishment even in such a weird season. Obviously, Bonaventure at first place in the conference, 11-13. VCU in second, 10-4. Davidson third, 7-4. Richmond 6-4. UMass 6-3. George Mason 8-6. The Billikens sit currently in sixth. Gosh, I can't read. Seventh. Sorry.
Seventh.
Yeah, seventh. At 5-4. The path to the double bye is still in play. It's going to take a lot. I believe, as I read, the Billikens will need to win on Monday, and then they will need some help from, I believe, Dayton to beat St. Bonaventure, maybe, or St. Joe's to beat Richmond. I'm sorry, they will need St. Joe's to beat Richmond to get that double bye.
It's possible. It's possible. We'll hold out some hope.
Yeah, St. Joe's. Come on, come off that win against Dayton and beat Richmond. Do it for the squad.
They haven't lost in February. It's possible.
Let's talk recruiting. We haven't gotten into it yet on the pod, but you are known fairly well among Billiken circles for your love of following recruiting. What is going on the trail for the Billikens?
So 2021 is an unusual year for a lot of reasons, but we SLU, even more so than most teams, has taken kind of an unconventional approach to the season. We know, or this recruiting class, I should say, we know that already Goodwin and French have said they're not returning, and that Perkins is on the fence as it stands, but everybody's getting another year. So it's going to be a kind of a weird transition time anyway. So that said, it seems like the staff's approach to the 2021 class has just been to punt. And they went all in on Nesbitt in the fall, Jordan Nesbitt, a local guard who committed to Memphis over us in Illinois. And then once they missed on him, decided we're going to pack it in for the fall. And in the spring, it's going to be mostly about transfers because I think the thought is that everybody's going to be immediately eligible again next season. And beyond transfers, kind of see what the high school and prep landscape looks like in the spring. So transfer names who have popped up a lot for 2021. Everybody knows that Cam Fletcher is not happy at Kentucky. He's not playing much. He had a big blowout publicly earlier this season with Calipari. So a lot of people are kind of keeping an eye on him to see what he's going to do, because even though things have not gone well with him at Kentucky, he's definitely a talent that you can't ignore. And so that's a guy to keep an eye on. Another kind of intriguing name who would be really a grad transfer is Brandon Mckissick, who we saw earlier this season, who plays for Kansas City. He's out of St. Louis U High, so he's another local kid. And would basically, I think he would be a fourth-year senior. I don't think he'd be a fifth-year senior. But again, if everybody's immediately eligible, he could step in as well and projects more as a role player, whereas Fletcher would be a starter. So those are two kind of local names to keep an eye on. And beyond that, I don't want to speculate on names that other people haven't yet. But it's really going to be all about the transfers in the spring once the season's over for the 2021 class.
Great stuff. I don't have the energy that you have for recruiting. It is astounding how great your research is when it comes to recruiting. There's no one better in my opinion. So
we can get into 2022 a little bit if you want.
Yeah, sure. Let's go. Let's go.
So for 2022, this is actually one where we're going to be looking at the recruiting classes themselves, the high school classes themselves, and SLU is clearly still active in these classes, whereas the names we kind of track in 2021 they've laid off a bit. So in 2022, you really have to start with the locals again, and this class has a post player, a big man named Terrace Reed, a 6'10". 4 or 5 out of Chaminade, and he's a clear 4-star top 100 recruit. He's now being heavily recruited by Michigan State, Ohio State. I think he said K-State, Iowa, Nebraska, basically the whole Big Ten are really involved. And then he's also got Mizzou, Florida, and Creighton and Xavier who are kind of most heavily looking at him right now. I think Illinois has just gotten into the picture. So Reed is one of these guys, when you watch him play, he's a little raw physically in some ways. He's really grown fast, but he's got the whole set of tools, and I would not be surprised if he's Chaminade's next NBA player. He's a really, really talented player. SLU's in the mix, but it's, I think there's about 10 schools right now that look very heavily like they're prioritizing Reed. Beyond Reed, Chaminade has another guy, Damien Mayo, 6'3", guard, who's kind of Fred Thatch esque kind of player where he's got a wide range of tools. He's very physical. He's kind of explosive going to the rim, good energy player, and he defends really hard. So SLU has seen a few guys like him before. We've had these kind of slightly undersized combo guards, but who are really strong. Jordair Jet is obviously another one, and he's, don't get me wrong, he's not Jet yet, but neither was Jet when he was a senior in high school. So Damien Mayo is another one to keep an eye on. His only offers so far are SLU and SIUE, but he's got plenty of other schools who are sniffing around. And then moving over to CBC, you've got Larry Hughes Jr. and Rob Martin. Hughes, obviously, we know who his dad was, and he's a much different player. He's actually he's pretty tall. I think he's grown to about 6'6" or so he might end up being taller than his dad. And he's a little bit more of a shooter. Whereas his dad was just an incredible athlete who wanted to get to the rim. Hughes really likes to find his spots on the perimeter. He's a pretty solid defender, kind of uses his length to create mismatches. He's another raw talent who I think needs to be a lot more assertive and do more to create his own offense. But he's a guy that, for his name alone, you want to keep an eye on. SLU is his only offer. Lot of schools taking a look at him. That's true of Rob Martin too, who's a 5'10" point guard. Like Yuri Collins, another really talented, complete point guard. He's leading CBC in scoring and adds about 5 assists a game, and he's really the engine behind CBC and what they do. Like Hughes, SLU is his only offer, but he's got Mizzou, K-State, Iowa, and other schools kind of taking a look at him too. There are some other local 2022 players who SLU is, recruiting in the mix on. Brian Taylor is a shooting guard out of Smet, SLU being his only offer at this point. And then Kellen Thames, who's Kelly Thames' son. Kelly Thames, a former Mizzou star. He's also kind of a combo guard, do-it-all go. Could play anything from a 1 to a 3. He just got an offer from Georgetown. SLU is his only other offer at this point. And he's
that's odd for his 2 only offers or Georgetown.
It is. But Georgetown has kind of done this with St. Louis lately. Most recently with the kid out of Ashan, Kobe Clark, where it's these sort of mid-level recruits who don't have a whole lot of national attention, and then they'll just kind of pop in. They've got a good link to the St. Louis area, and they'll just kind of pop in and identify talent and pull these guys away, because once you get a Georgetown offer, it's like, wow, okay. So anyway, I think Kellen's recruitment is a little harder to pin down because he's not a guy who's on social media or anything like that. So it's a little harder to track who's on him and who's really recruiting him the hardest. But those are his offers, and obviously Mizzou is involved there as well. So those are the kids that we've offered locally in this class, and there's some other ones outside the St. Louis area to keep an eye on. But a couple others who are near the region. Braxton Stacker at Cardinal Ritter. He transferred over from Belleville East before this season, so he's new to Ritter. He's a guy to keep an eye on, kind of a 6'5", 2'3" wing player. Our coaches seem to be recruiting this guy, Zach Cleveland, who's kind of an undersized power forward out of Normal Community High School in Illinois. He's just lighting it up for them this season. The whole Illinois high school basketball season it's only just recently started. So like literally this month. So these guys haven't had a lot of run lately, but in a short season, his numbers are just unbelievable. And
he's got a great name too.
Zach Cleveland is hard to beat. Yeah. And then there's Braden Applehands out of Blue Springs, Missouri. Blue Springs is one of the top teams in the KC area and really the state this season. He's like a 6'6", 6'7" tall shooter who can really light it up. His numbers don't jump off the page, but I think he's averaging like 17 a game. But he often does not play at all in the fourth quarter and gets pulled out early in the third because they've blown out so many teams. It doesn't have any offers yet, but has a lot of Big 12, Big 10 schools kind of looking around. So He's another one that will be, definitely monitoring closely. And that's really the main names we need to know in the 2022 class. I guess I did leave out one guy, Dante Hollyman. He goes by Tay. He's also under 6 feet, point guard, but he scores a ton. And he's a coach's son. His dad's the coach, but he'll frequently score in the high 30s, low 40s. Can really light it up. And the reason I bring him up, he's out of McAlester, Oklahoma. But SLU's been recruiting him for a long time, and he recently just announced his top 7. SLU is in there with DePaul, Arizona State, Tulsa, Akron, and South Alabama. So it's an unusual list, especially as you get to the end of it. But all of those schools have been on him for a while, and he decided to kind of focus in his recruitment there. Even though he's a small point guard, much different player from Collins because he's looking to score first. And he's just an incredible shooter. Does just a really dynamic player. He's a fun player to watch. So we'll be watching him closely to see how he whittles down his top 7.
I think SLU has a really good shot at him. Everything that's happened on social media with him, it's almost like they're locked in with St. Louis. It's crazy. Like, yeah. I don't know. I don't have any idea. I don't talk to anybody in the coaching staff, nothing like that. But just from he followed us. He followed me personally. Yeah. Like I was like, okay, well, I guess we got this guy. I don't know.
Right, his dad too. I mean, they definitely like SLU. I think the original story with him is he went to when Ford was at Oklahoma State. He went to his camp when he was a little kid, like in 3rd grade or something like that. Like one of Ford's early seasons there, and has kind of been a fan ever since. So clearly, he made an impression, and clearly Holloman has panned out to a D1 talent. So you look at his list and you see like Arizona and Arizona State. Those are the kind of level of programs that I wonder on a guy like him. They might not want a commitment from him yet because Arizona is routinely going after 4- and 5-star players. Arizona State, not quite as much. So I don't know if they want an early commitment necessarily. Whereas I think DePaul, Tulsa, Akron would all take it. And then South Alabama is they're in, a program that's just in a little bit a lower tier, I guess you'd say. I don't want to insult them or anything like that, but they would love to have a player like this. I'll put it that way. So SLU is kind of in the happy middle of his list here, and he's a really intriguing player.
All right, we're gonna switch over to the preview of the UMass game. We got Curry Hicks Sage. He joined us. He's a UMass writer, podcaster, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to jump over to that interview right now. And now we have the pleasure to welcome on a special guest to look forward to the UMass game. It'll go on the day I release this, Monday night, 5 p.m. It's Curry Hicks Sage. He does the UMass basketball podcast. He tweets a lot. He says. But it's good to have you on, Curry.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. Glad to do it. I apologize if my wife's on a work call and I have 2 children under 4 sleeping, so one may get up in the middle of this. But I hope you guys are, we're pretty lo-fi on my show, so I apologize if I'm making your show less professional by virtue of being here.
Oh well, no. So we actually had 2 notes on that. Peter had his family guest star on one of our episodes. And then
right through that door.
Yep.
My wife will make an occasional appearance on the show, just by virtue of being around the same room.
Yeah. As far as the technical aspect goes, I'm learning as I go. I was not the technical advisor or the technical guy on the house that Rick built. So I'm learning how to do all this myself. So, but anyway, let's get into the real reason you're here. First, I think everything or what most Billiken fans want to know is how has UMass fans and UMass Twitter and whatnot been dealing with this the strangest of COVID pauses?
I would say it varies based on the outcome before or immediately after the pause. So to start the year, I think it was just, kind of agonizing and frustrating with the first one. A bunch of guys got hit, so we missed, the first few weeks and felt really behind. And then, I think with the second one, it was just kind of a bummer because basically we had played Davidson and then we had to miss a couple games because Davidson had come down with COVID. So it wasn't really their fault. And then the third one was a campus-wide suspension. That was really frustrating because it really wasn't on the basketball players. There was like a couple frat parties and a breakout. So that one, everybody was just annoyed at kind of the school and it's like ham-fisted decision. But as far as the team went, there was a weird, it was kind of nice because we were without our two best players probably for a couple other more games, coming off a great road win without them at our rival in Rhode Island, and then sort of didn't have to play Bonna, VCU, and Dayton in a 7-day stretch. So, I think it sort of saved the possibility of UMass, and it is a little ridiculous, and I don't think anyone's like, everybody wanted to watch games, but at the same time, it's like if ever it was going to happen, it's like kind of nice that even going 1-1 in their two final games after that long pause, they could finish with the 3 seed if they win tomorrow night. So, I mean, it's obviously been frustrating and annoying, but I think there's a glimmer of hope that it could set us up well for an A-10 tournament run. And I think this group, and I've said this all year, as maddeningly inconsistent as they can be, has the makings of a team that could make a deep run in the tournament. Now, don't get me wrong, they could lose the first game by 15 as well, but they have some depth and, I think they're better in situations where there's not as much time to prepare and you can kind of just get out and go. So it's going to be a very, very interesting final week. And I think even if they'd played 30 games this year, the fan base has been looking forward to the A-10 tournament in particular since the team was assembled. And it's going to just be, now we find out who this team is.
Speaking of how the team was assembled, McCall seemed to be under some pressure last year. It was last year, right, when he kind of completely overhauled the roster and the coaching staff and everything?
It was just prior to last year. It was at the end of 2 years ago. So last year was the first year of kind of like a second start, if you will, for his tenure.
My question is kind of a two-parter in that is what you're seeing now, UMass 6-3 and very well lined up for a possible 3 seed in the tournament. Is that the result of this roster overhaul? And what do you see on the roster beyond Trey Mitchell that is kind of leading to some of the success in a very limited schedule this year?
So the roster is definitely better by a wide measure than it was last year. Sorry, say the first part of the question again. I just want to make sure I'm capturing
the way that we kind of saw it as outsiders was McCall was under some pressure and he basically got rid of all his coaches and started his staff over, and he only retained a few players basically, and it seems like he had a mandate to overhaul the roster based on upgrading the talent.
That's all true. Yep.
And so you guys were young last season, and I'm still pretty young, honestly, but it was just like talent at all costs. It doesn't matter how young. We have to see results, and we have to see them soon. So, I mean, was that the mandate, and is he delivering on that?
Definitely the mandate, and I think he's delivering. I mean, there are certainly improvements, right? Like even last year, they won 14 games after winning like 11 the previous year with a much weaker schedule. So they were 14-17, and then this year they're 7-5. So there's definitely improvement. Whether or not that improvement is coming at the pace I think people expected or hoped, I think most would say probably not. It's missing. I think they're just underachieving. But there's been glimpses where you see how much talent is there. And I think that's why, because of the shortened season, this next week is really going to determine his future at UMass, because the talent is there now. I don't think there's really a question about that. It's just they only sporadically put it all together, and they've not really beaten anybody good in the league. And so, we're going to learn. I think this game against St. Louis, in many ways, we'll learn more about where this UMass team is than any other game that they've played this year.
In terms of where his job stands, do you think COVID kind of kicked the can down the road for a year, as I'm sure it will with a lot of coaches?
Yeah, I mean, no, yeah, keep going, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, all I had left to ask was, or do you think that matters?
No, I mean, I think so. He had 2 more years on his deal. And I think in some ways this year was about getting him an extension, and or maybe he wanted to go elsewhere. If, coaches are ambitious people, and he's from the South, and if he had an incredible year this year and they won 22 games or whatever, he'd probably find another gig in where he's from. Because he has 2 more years, and because that at this point they've salvaged at least a 500 season, which is an upgrade from last year, which was an upgrade from the year before. I think it would be impossible to can him, but 7-7 is not where people wanted to end the year. And so, and by virtue of just having this whole schedule kind of just shrunk down into what it is, these games take on an added significance now. So I think if you win this one and you win one in the A10 tournament, you kind of, salvage like two or three games above 500. That's, encouraging, and he'll be fine. But I don't think, unless he kind of wins the league here, you're going to see an extension on that deal. And, if he loses the next two and kind of ends the year 7-7, and it's this like frustrating season, with the way transfers are these days, you might see a lot of roster overhaul again, and kind of a lame duck 5th season. And after that, probably he's gone, so it's strange. I said it, and I know I'm like kind of playing both sides here, but my entire last episode was basically about how these next several games completely determine like the next 5 years of UMass basketball. And, I think that the sentiment around the fan base is, generally speaking, like, he's not been horrible enough that you can just can him after 4 with all the talent there, but he's certainly not exceeding expectations at the moment. And I think after that Rhode Island game win without their 2 best players, there was a lot of hope all of a sudden, and then that hope kind of just dissipated right with the Richmond loss. So it's really game to game, and every game is taking on this added significance because there's so few games. So it's just so hard to say right now.
As far as this game coming up goes, we all know that Trey Mitchell has the ability to go ahead and score 30 to 40 points in a game and just completely take over. But outside of Trey Mitchell, what should Billiken fans look for out of UMass that maybe they don't know about?
So I think, especially in this game, the freshman point guard, Javon Garcia, who's probably around 10 and a half and a few assists a game, really exciting player, especially in the open court. And I think, this could be a very up and down game and high scoring, and favoring him and how he likes to play. And he's end to end, 94 feet. He's incredible in the half court. If it's a grinded out game, he's not as comfortable playing like that kind of, 65, 60 A10 ball, because he's just so explosive and has high major athleticism. He's a really exciting player. And especially for a team as athletic as St. Louis, I think he kind of like embraces games like that. He's a real competitor. And I think it's just like, there's a little bit of St. Louis in his game, if you will. Some physicality, good defender, a lot of length. So he's an exciting talent, but he also has really off nights. He's had 23-point games. He's had 2-point games. Freshmen will do that. And then Noah Fernandez, who is the guy I kind of characterize as the second best player this year, is really he's a Wichita State transfer, kind of a raw deal there last year. Basically missed, like the entire preseason in the first month or so of the season with an injury. They had like 6 guys at his position, and they had the Greg Marshall situation. So his numbers in the AAC looked really insignificant, but I think everybody knew he was going to be good, and he has been. He's like probably 12 and 5. He's just a pest on the ball. He's really he's just like a grinder. It's a cliche, but he plays really hard all 40 minutes. He can shoot the 3, and he gives us a different look defensively than we had last year. You might recall the kid Sean East, who played well against St. Louis, the lefty, but he's gone. Plays at Bradley now. He had some nice games, but was not really didn't really enjoy the defensive side of the ball. Garcia and Fernandez do. And then freshman Ronnie DeGray, who's started every game and is kind of like a consummate glue guy. He's probably at like 10-5, if I had to guess, shoots like 65%. Incredibly offensively polished, struggles defensively a bit. But, his father played at Colorado with Sean C. Billups, really solid. So those four kind of like the core. And then there's two kids, TJ Weeks, who didn't play last year, missed most of the season, and missed most of the A10 slate, or the entire A10 slate, and Carl Pierre, who's been there forever. Those two are like, in many ways, very similar players. They're both spot up shooters, and will one of them will probably give you double figures, and then the other will shoot like 3 for 14. Just depends on the night. So that's kind of like the core. And there are some other young freshmen who've had 15-point games. So talent is not the issue on this roster. I mean, it's similar to St. Louis, I think, of where St. Louis was maybe 2 years ago in their. Well, no, I mean, it's maybe not a great analogy, but like there's a lot of parallels between these programs. I think St. Louis is much further along in their development arc, but both teams kind of get a bunch of guys who are like fringe high major kids and like a couple stars, and it's all about like how much your role players perform on a given night and just how hard you play. Like, I think that's a lot in the Atlantic 10. It sounds, not terribly sophisticated, but it's like if you compete for 40 minutes and really defend and get after it, and you make some open threes, like you can win any game with the talent both these teams have. Conversely, as you guys know, the pauses and everything else, if you take possessions off, and all of a sudden it's like you can lose the game by 10 or 15 points. So there's some definite parallels between the programs.
What?
So assuming, go ahead, Zach.
Oh, well, I was just going to ask two-part question. What does UMass need to do to win this game? And where do you think SLU holds the advantage over UMass in this game?
So I think UMass needs to focus on UMass. And I say this in like every game with them. It's like they're a little fickle, and an opponent is almost like less important than – and I've never seen – this is a case with a couple of McCall teams, and it sounds so cliche, but it's like when the bench is engaged, when they're locked in and not nonchalant, they're really good. So it sounds so cliche. It's like stay focused for 40 minutes. But really, it is like that. Like they just have these sort of like bouts where they have wasted possessions. Carl Pierre, goes like 1 for 8 from 3 seemingly every other game and plays a ton of minutes. And you're kind of like, why is this happening? And when they play up tempo and their press is working and they're trapping and they're moving the ball, like they're tough to beat, but you just don't know which group you're going to get. So it's kind of just psychological and like temperament wise is just if they're locked in. And I think they'll have trouble. I think St. Louis has tremendous size. I mean, Hassan French, for instance, played under UMass assistant Tony Bergeron in high school. Bergeron is in his second year, and like 8 of our players like played with him in high school. So including Trey Mitchell. So, but French is obviously familiar with the things like UMass wants to do. And I think his physicality on Trey is a real challenge, especially because I still think even in this environment, teams do tend to get a couple more calls at home. Like if this game was at UMass, I'd be less concerned about that. But if Trey gets a second or third foul early, UMass can sometimes shut down for 3-4 minutes and all of a sudden it's a 16-point game. So your size, and I like that new kid, the kid from UNC Wilmington, I forget his name.
Martin Linson.
Yeah, I don't know why. I just like his game from what little I've seen of SLU this year.
He's kind of become a fan favorite. I think Peter can back me up on that.
Yeah, he gives you kind of quick offense. He's a really efficient scorer. He's got really nice post moves. He's not a great defender. He's a little foul prone. He's not a great rebounder or shot blocker, but he's a high energy player who plays really smart, polished on the offensive end.
Yeah, and like UMass doesn't really – I mean, we have this a similar transfer sort of deal, but who was actually fairly good when Trey got hurt for 2 games. But when Trey's there, he plays like 4 minutes, and so he can't ever really get in the flow. You know, when Trey wasn't there, he scored like 11 points, and when he is there, he's literally scores 0. So, but I think like your size, and then you're just like your strength and physicality on the wings. I think UMass is not a particularly, despite some of the Ken Palm numbers, which I think are a little deceiving because of the few games, the limited number of games. UMass is not a very good perimeter defending team, and I think the ability of Goodwin and sorry, my kid is screaming in the background. Who's the other stud? My brain is just
defensively, Thatch,
no, offensively, the other wing,
Perkins.
Goodwin and Perkins. Yeah, so Goodwin and Perkins can both put the ball on the floor and like are physical, and I think UMass will struggle a lot with both those guys. Ronnie DeGray has the size to guard them, but he's not particularly quick defensively, and it will require some guys who are freshmen that don't play as much to really give those guys a run for their money. There's a kid on UMass whose name I'm going to call out in particular for this one, by the name of Cairo McCrory. Very physical, 6'5", like 210 guard who will go for like 11 or points or 0. He's one of those like freshmen, but he's like the only guy that I would feel confident man-to-man against either of those two that I just mentioned. So, I would watch that name, and then a kid named DeAndre Dominguez, who actually led us in scoring against Richmond, who's like 6'8" and kind of a wing player. Those two are freshmen, and because of a couple injuries and other things and the uniqueness of the matchup, will be key players in this game in particular. I wouldn't really mention them in a lot of games, but they're going to have to, because Pierre and Weeks are not athletically anywhere near where you'd need to be to guard either of those guys on St. Louis. So I think a lot will be determined there. I do think UMass can. What's Collins' injury status these days?
Hampered, but playing.
So he's banged up, his ankles.
Yeah.
I do think, especially with him hobbled, I think UMass could have an advantage there, and just making it hard for them to get into their offense. And their press could be, you can say hi really quick. Sorry, this is my son. Say hi.
Hi.
All right, now you gotta go. So you gotta go. So I think that could actually be an advantage, particularly in the press. If UMass can stay out of foul trouble, Garcia's length and Fernandez is kind of like nose for the ball. A couple other guys could. UMass will definitely want to really get after him. And I think if Collins can get out of that and St. Louis can run offense, UMass will struggle. I think when they pound it down to French and other guys, they're the wings on the perimeter we just talked about with some size and strength, that will give them trouble. But if this is an up tempo game, just like last year when it went into the 80s and overtime, maybe double overtime, and UMass, I thought UMass really should have won that game. They choked down the stretch, but it's going to be. Collins, I think, is the X factor tomorrow night for you guys.
It's an interesting take.
Yeah, I like Fernandez's game a lot. Actually, he was a SLU recruit. We offered him out of high school before he chose Wichita State. So overall, is it a pretty healthy roster right now? I see that like Mitchell hasn't led UMass in scoring since January 24th against Davidson. I mean, is he all right?
So he was out for 2 games. He missed Fordham and Rhode Island, and then there was some. So basically, there's only been 3 games, and he came back for one of them. So I expect he had like a collarbone thing. It was like a weird like shoulder thing. They couldn't pop it back in. I don't really follow it, but he's back now. I expect him to be like close to fully healthy. I mean, I'm sure it's a little mind over matter at this point in the season, but it's. Right. I think he's. I wouldn't use that as an excuse. I don't think he's 100%, but I think. He's good enough that anyone would want him starting on their team, even at whatever percentage he's at. And I think Noah had like sort of a wrist thing. He appears to be pretty good now. They are without Debaji Walker, Samaki Walker's son, randomly. And he's a guy who like had not given them much offensively, but for a few game stretch had really emerged as like the defensive stopper. He's like 6'9", incredibly long, and was just like killing dudes on the perimeter, again, and it was really helpful. So him being out has been a bummer. That they missed, but a kid by the name of Preston Santos didn't return. He kind of left the team right before the season started. He was a really good defensive player last year. So there have been moments without him that have been a bummer. But other than that, injuries wise, UMass is fully healthy. So they will play all 10, I guess all 11 at this point. Or did they have, I don't know, whatever. I mean, I wouldn't use injuries as like, health is always an issue this time of year, but they've only played 12 games. Dibaji's the only one who's not healthy right now. And it's much better situation than it was even 2 or 3 weeks ago when they were without Mitchell and Fernandez.
So I got one more question for you, and then we'll let you go. Prediction for Monday night, I guess, because I'm going to drop it Monday.
I always do this where I sort of play both sides of these because UMass is such a fickle team, and frankly, St. Louis has been that way too. So can I give 2 predictions? And if I mean, look, I'm going to say this. I think you'll get a really good effort from UMass tomorrow night, and unlike some other teams in the league, who I think St. Louis might actually be the most talented team in the league. I think UMass matches up uniquely well with St. Louis, where they don't with certain other teams. So, and I think the fact that if they win, they get a 3 seed most likely, and wouldn't have to face Richmond, Davidson, or Bonaventure, the 3 teams that they are just horrible against until a final. Gives you as much incentive as you could possibly need. They have decent amount of rest coming in. It's not like there's much of a home court advantage without a significant fan base. So I think UMass really could win this game tomorrow. And I would say like it'll be close, 72-69, something like that. There's another scenario where Trey Mitchell picks up some early fouls, and we're not hitting our threes, and that's when those 2 things happen. Like, it's just a disaster, and St. Louis runs away with it, 80-61. So that's the spectrum, but I think you'll get a good effort tomorrow night from UMass. It is March, if you don't get a good effort tomorrow night, when are you going to get it? And I think going into the A10 tournament with all that's on the line, especially for UMass, I mean, because St. Louis can't get a top 4 bid no matter what, right?
There's one path, I think. And it's like an outside shot, very much an outside shot.
So, because of the absurdity of the schedule, UMass has this preposterous chance of becoming the 3 seed just by virtue of winning this game. And that's not fair. It's like, but it's the way the cookie crumbles. And so I think that has to be a huge factor. I mean, and it is against a team they played really well last year.
Twice. Yeah.
Twice, so I just think I like if there's any top team in the league I like UMass against, it's St. Louis. Not because I think they're that much better. I don't think they're better. I just think that like Travis Ford, who we know him very well, and I don't mean to go off on a tangent here, but
here we go.
St. Louis, Travis is a good coach. Like he's always solid, but he's not a guy preparation wise that you're freaked out to play. He's not going to scheme you into oblivion, right? Like if St. Louis plays well, they have the talent to beat 95% of teams in the country with relative ease. But if they don't, yes, that's the one playing UMass tomorrow, buddy. But it's like you don't always get that from him, and you guys know that as fans. But it's just not a team like Mark Schmidt. You're scared to play. They're going to run like these crazy schemes, and these screens are going to pop out of nowhere and materialize. St. Louis, it's like, you're putting your guys out, we're putting our guys out, and we're going to just play a basketball game, and whoever plays better is going to win the game. Do you see it that way? Like, that's kind of my
I think almost that Travis Ford at times complicates things a little too much. And I think that's kind of a problem at times this season, was that it seemed like nobody had any clue what they were doing or what the plan was or how to execute the plan. And I'm not the greatest basketball mind. I really bring the personality. That's really all I'm good for. Pete might know a little bit better than I do.
I think overall you do have the right impression. Especially recently, there have been some games where we've been totally outcoached, if not outplayed. I think both in some occasions, like the Dayton game. I would agree with Zach. He does tend to complicate it at times, but for the most part, he's a player's coach. And he's gonna give them some schemes and tell them to run our game. But I don't always have the utmost confidence in our scout.
Yeah. I think there was an issue recently of who had the scout for a game, and but that's way inside baseball for a preview.
Yeah, I mean, these teams are familiar with each other. It's just, and so much of college basketball, right, is like, who plays better that night? Like, it's not the chasm in talent is not always that pronounced, right? Like, it's not you're not playing Fordham where you can play badly and still win. Whoever plays well, and if both teams play really well, you probably win narrowly too. But, it's like these teams both have a lot of talent on the roster, and both teams have been inconsistent this year, and it's just a matter of like which team shows up. So I'm hoping, a good one shows up for UMass, but nothing really will surprise me with this group anymore.
Well, we're hoping a good win shows up for the Billikens.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Hey, good to talk to you. Thanks for joining the pod, and we look forward to tweeting at you during the game. I'm sure we'll talk some.
Oh yeah, we like
mad jump.
Most of UMass Twitter is fun, and we'll mix it up. So shout out to you guys and keep doing the good work, and hopefully we'll see you at a future A10 tournament.
Absolutely.
Sounds good.
Take it easy.
Right, thanks. Take it easy.
All right, we're back. Thank you so much to Curry, Hicks, Sage for coming on and giving us insights into the UMass basketball program leading up to tonight's game. Well, I guess tomorrow's game, whatever, Monday night game against UMass. Switch it over to women's basketball. The women are coming off a very nice win at Davidson on the 26th. This was big time for them. They have extended their winning streak to 6 and are going into the conference tournament, I believe, as a 3rd seed. So did you get to catch this one?
No, unfortunately I didn't see the game. Caught up with highlights though, and this was, 6 in a row, and then this is the regular season now. So they're off until the 10th of March when that A10 championship starts. But yet another great defensive performance here.
Mm-hmm. Yes, totally. It's sometimes it's hard to tell, especially interior, whether it's good defense or not. Perimeter defense is one thing, but the Billikens played outstanding. I think you have to truly give the player of the game, even though she's not at the top of the scorebook. Julia Martinez was absolutely outstanding in this game. 4 of 5 from the field. She pulled in 9 rebounds and scored 10 points. 3-to-1 assist to turnover, or 1-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. Sorry. Just fantastic game from the sophomore.
She was great. And I like, she just does a little bit of everything. She plays with confidence. She plays good defense. I really like her game and what she brings as that kind of first player off the bench. She's really sparked this team on this streak too. The other player who had a huge night, maybe not in the scoring column, but elsewhere, Smith Traore, 17 rebounds, which reminds me of the game last season that I saw them. They played at Cincinnati at UC, and I took my son to that one, and that was her first big game, and I want to say she had like 17 or 19 rebounds in that game as well. So when she's on, she just grabs everything in sight. It's fun to watch.
Yeah, the Billiken women took a page out of the men's book and dominated the boards in this one. 54 total rebounds to Davidson's 19.
Yeah. Well, 38 rebounds for Davidson.
Oh, now I'm dumb. 38 rebounds.
16 is still a hell of a rebounding margin. Yep. Neither team really did. The rebounds get jacked up a little bit when neither team is shooting well,
right?
And that was the case in this game. But there's no question that they got it done on the boards in this one, and really frustrated Davidson. 45 points for Davidson on 67 shots is just a brutal night.
Yeah. Brooke Flowers, stat sheet average, not incredible, but she had a hell of a game in this one. Still chugging along. as long as she shows up, that's kind of the X factor for the Billikens, just to have her contribute statistically. It doesn't have to be anything incredible.
No, she's never, the offense is not going through her. She doesn't have to be a big scorer. But again, I mean, her season just keeps getting really better and better. After a kind of slow start, her rebounding numbers have been unbelievable. She's averaging now over 10 rebounds a game and blocking a ton of shots lately. She's blocked, it looks like 14 shots in the last 4 games. So she's just playing confident in a way that we have not seen from her at all since she was kind of this raw but really promising freshman.
Yeah, it's great to see her come around. I mean, I probably need to eat some crow a little bit with Brooke Flowers because I just was not convinced that this front line was going to be good enough, especially if Brooke Flowers didn't step up. And she has truly risen to the occasion over the past month of basketball.
Yes, incredibly consistent play. And if we can get a good game from both her and MST at the same time, then just about anybody in this conference can be beaten. Yeah,
I mean, Dayton looks fairly average. They struggled to win at Davidson. So I think the Billikens are in a great spot going into the tournament, especially as the 3rd seed. Dayton obviously sits at the top. They're now 12-2. Fordham in 2nd place. We don't even know if they're going to play because of the situation up there in New York. So SLU could enter as the 3rd or the 2nd seed. It remains to be seen. And again, I don't know what their schedule is going forward up until the tournament.
Yeah, but regardless of what happens with Fordham in this tournament, we're on this. SLU is on the other side of the bracket from Dayton, so you don't see Dayton until the final, which means that you're going to have a few very winnable games leading up to Dayton. So I think this team has done everything it can possibly do in the last 6 games to put itself in the best position possible, for another shot at Dayton and possibly their first ever NCAA tournament bid. So I really hope this continues over the long break because, like I said, they don't play until the 10th. So hopefully that just means, they're well rested and they're not losing any of the sharpness or momentum that they've shown lately.
Yeah, I'm excited. I don't think I've been this excited for women's basketball since they had the NIT run a few years ago. That was quite fun. I implore you guys, if you're mainly here for men's basketball, check out the women's basketball games. They're almost all of them are on ESPN Plus, if not all of them. And like you said, the women's tourney starts on the 10th. The Billikens will be at worst the 3rd seed, I believe.
The whole thing will take place at the Siegel Center at VCU in Richmond. The first 3 rounds are all on ESPN Plus. Like you said, so they're easy to find. And then the semifinals will be on CBS Sports Network with the final on ESPNU Sunday the 14th. That's a morning game, actually, so 10 a.m. Central.
Moving on to men's soccer, we're going to kind of go through this real quick. Men's soccer, Bolt played 2 games at Grand Park this week. That's the indoor facility in Indianapolis, or just outside Indianapolis. They come away. They beat Butler with a 2-0 win. Mujib Marana scores in the 32nd minute and Simon Betcher in the 46th. And then they took on Xavier a couple days later and get another win, 3-1. Chandler Vaughn scored in the 14th minute. Mason Leith in the 25th. Felix Botongan for Xavier made it 2-1 in the 48th. And then Betcher finished the game off in the 83rd with his second goal of the week and of the season in the 83rd minute.
Yeah, these are 2 nice wins. I don't think Butler's very good this year, but they're still a Big East team. And Xavier's always pretty solid. And didn't you say they're coming off a Big East title?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, so to beat them 3-1 is kind of a nice statement. Go to 4-1 on the year. And the one that stands out to me in these games is Simon Becker, who missed that PK previously. To net a couple on the heels of that is really nice. because he gets his confidence up. He's new to the team this year, so really good stuff from the men's soccer team.
That's a fantastic callback, by the way. Well done. I wouldn't. I don't make those connections. I'm terrible at making those connections. So I'm glad you did. Absolutely.
I'm coming back.
I know. Women's soccer. They continue to roll on an undefeated season. Indiana State at Herman Stadium. They win 3-0. Halverson scores in the 32nd. Emily Grork, her third of the year in the 75th. And then Carson Cole opens up her account as well in the 85th to give the Billikens a 3-0 win. Then they had a tough trip to Arkansas. This is a team who is coming off the runner-up in their SEC conference tournament and coming off a 7-0 win over Missouri State. They go into Fayetteville and they dominate this game. 3-1 win over am I reading this right? Their stat broadcast says number 7 Arkansas.
That's what I'm seeing.
Wow, it didn't even occur to me. So they go in and they beat number 7 Arkansas 3-1. It looks like they held off a bit of an onslaught from Arkansas on the defensive end. 15 total shots for Arkansas, but Emily Grork scored for the Billikens in this one. I'm gonna have to find it. Just ended, folks. So give me a small break here with this one. I am gonna have to find the box score. I apologize, guys. But I'll just tell you the scores. I'm not sure I can tell you in order. I apologize. But Emily Grork scores, Hannah Larson scores, and Sophia Stram chipped in the third goal of the game. This is a huge win.
It is, and Arkansas, I'm confirming right now, I'm looking at the rankings right now. They are from, it looks like the fall season where they're the number 7 team. So they did play a fall season. So I know that's a little weird this year because some teams did not play in the fall. But they were 9-2 in the fall. And then, as you say, coming off a big win over Missouri State, a blowout win. So this is to go into Arkansas on the road and do this is quite a statement. And it's something, we knew this team was talented. We've said it every time. They're young. So we didn't quite know what they were capable of. And, they've conceded some goals against weaker teams they'd probably like to have back. But they're undefeated and they're beating everybody pretty soundly.
Yeah, I'm so confused by these rankings. It's distracting because does it include teams that didn't play?
Yeah, I think this is just the teams that played in the fall. I don't think they've refreshed them for the restart.
Okay, interesting. So, look, again, like you said, this is a 10-2 team, 7-1 in SEC. So this is a huge win regardless of whatever that little number next to them says. This is outstanding. I'm super excited about the women's soccer program right now. My goodness, Katie Shields, what a pickup for this program as a coach. She has just been outstanding in her tenure so far.
Yeah, the goal now is just to keep her as long as we possibly can because there's no question she's going to be desired by other programs as time goes on. She's been awesome. I love what she does there.
Quick going through volleyball. Davidson, they beat them 3-0 Sunday after we recorded. They went to Marquette and actually snapped a 30-plus set streak for Marquette. They win one set but lose the match 3-1. They dropped 3 straight to ISU and then come home today right before we recorded this and took 3-0 win against Duquesne. They will play Duquesne on the 5th as well in Pittsburgh. That's kind of an odd wrinkle to the schedule as well that they're going to go ahead and head back up to Duquesne.
Yeah, and I think didn't they just beat Duquesne today? Did you say that? Or, okay.
Yes,
right.
yes.
Yeah, okay. And then so they head up at the end of the week to Duquesne.
Right.
So it's a team that we should get. We should be pretty good in the A10. I mean, really, Dayton's the only big challenge coming up, I think.
VCU has beaten us pretty soundly. So,
Okay,
yeah, like this team is I'll put it this way. It's like that scene in Moneyball where Billy Bean talks about the levels of Major League Baseball. There's Dayton, VCU, Tier 1. There's SLU, Tier 2. There's a whole lot of shit, and then everybody else in the A10. Like, I think Duquesne is like behind SLU in the standing. So, look, this team's going to finish third. It's a foregone conclusion. Whether or not they can steal some games against VCU and Dayton, I'm not entirely confident. But as I've said before, that's kind of how Miller has built his 10-year career at SLU, by staying at about that third spot and sometimes getting second. But this is a program that needs to compete. It needs to be a rock fight every year between SLU, VCU, and Dayton, with each team taking matches off the other. This can't be a situation where you lose 3-0 to anybody in this league. I don't care. It just can't. It's not that good. Right. And you have a huge budget, comparatively speaking.
Right. And attractive facilities. And it kind of seems like at this point we know who they are, and they're just going to be this for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, it seems like a couple assistants have been brought in recently that are really starting to refocus efforts towards the St. Louis area. It sounds like Kent Miller maybe had been lukewarm on the St. Louis area as a volleyball hotbed, which it is. But they've really kind of moved forward in making it a priority, whereas it may not have been in years past. Let's move on. Baseball. They had a tough weekend against North Dakota State. North Dakota State. They dropped 3 of 3 with the fourth game today being canceled. It was scheduled for 1:00. They dropped 7-4, 5-4, and 6-5 decisions. So close games there. Tough overall weekend for them. As far as softball goes, again, they're having a tough start to the year as well. They took on DePaul at noon today, but prior to that, they lost to Bradley on Monday 5-4 and Ball State 8-1 on Friday. Today, I'm trying to pull up the stat broadcast because I forgot they were playing.
DePaul today.
Yeah, they are down 7-5 as we speak to DePaul in the top of the 7th. So they'll have one more chance to come back. One more note. I want to talk about field hockey because this is a program that has sucked for the better part of 3 decades. The 80s was about their last gasp of positive energy. But the Billiken field hockey team, and I want to preface this by saying Lindenwood is involved in this record. So I don't know if you want to count that or not, but after winning 4-0 today versus Bellarmine in a back-to-back, they are now 3-0, 2-0 against Division I competition. That's just good to see. I don't care who you are.
Yeah, it's great. It's great to see them get back on track. I actually did not know the program went back as far as the 80s.
It went back further.
It's been really bad for a long time.
Yes.
It's been a complete afterthought for the athletic department and within the context of field hockey. So it's great to see this early momentum. They've got some tough games against Miami, Ohio later this week.
That's going to be real tough.
But they're local. They're playing in town. So, maybe they can carry in this momentum.
I'll kind of for people who may have not followed with the house that Rick built, because I talked about it quite a bit, but I'll put it this way. Recently speaking, coaches Danielle Baumgartner, 6-25, Haley Rausch, 2 seasons, 3-35, Lauren Bruce, 5 seasons, 6-91, Kathleen O'Brien, 12-42. 1981 was the last winning season, I think. 12-7. And the last time they had won 3 in a row was 1996. So, and it happened to include Bellarmine too, funny enough. So, but I think to start off 2-0 against Division I competition, whether or not it's a team that's just coming up, is big for a team like SLU Field Hockey, because they're trying to build from absolutely nothing.
Yeah, I mean, you heard those career records. This puts their current coach only a couple wins away from being one of the better coaches in history, even though this is her first year.
Yeah.
So, so credit to her, Zoe Adkins, and I would love to see her kind of build on this and actually make them somewhat competitive.
Well, I want to thank. Before we go, I want to thank everybody on Twitter. I put out the note that I promised I'd release this on Sunday night if we got up to 160, and I think we got up to 175.
Let's see. What are we now at? 172.
172. So big shout out. We did 12 more than expected. And I believe one of those was Rammer. So that's fun too.
That's a big get.
Yes. So don't forget, as we're signing off, follow us on Twitter, Midtown Mad Pod, and follow me, Zach Miller, MMP, and Peter is a tweeter. Thank you so much to our guest, Curry Hicks Sage. And thank you guys for listening. And we're going to continue to bring you content throughout the A10 tournament. Hopefully, we may have an A10 preview. I think that's something we're working on. So we may drop that Wednesday. Again, thank you all for listening. Pete, any last words for the people out there?
Just go SLU.
Go SLU. Take it easy, guys.
Thanks, guys.